So I was talking to a family friend the other day, Biff, who's been married for 50 years. 50.
Oh, that's great. 50 years. That's awesome.
What is that? The gold? What is the 50 years? Like gold?
Yeah, diamond? Diamond?
And I said, what is the secret to the long, successful marriage? And he said, you got to make sure that your wife understands once a week, you need a night off to spend it with the boys. Just don't waste it on the boys. Don't waste on the boys. Yeah, and I'm not going to say it was Paul LaCroix. I'm not going to say it's not Paul LaCroix. Hey, guess who I bumped into on the way home from eye surgery yesterday?
Who did you bump into on the way home from eye surgery yesterday?
Everybody. Hello, everybody. This is Jacques.
Why do I put up with this every time?
Because I'm sexy. And I'm talking to.
Why do I put up with this every time? Oh, this is Biff.
It is Biff. Let's get right into it. First, big shout out to our friend Abby, who was on the sideshow last week.
Yep. It's fantastic.
I got a lot of great feedback from the people in Llama and some of the other people that I've worked with over the years who, I mean, it's one of those things, like, you know, and I'm not being facetious when I say this, like, recognition means a lot to people, and just acknowledging, you know, what people have done, that means the world to everybody. So, you know, so I'm really glad that, you know, we had her on. She was absolutely awesome. And I would like to, you know, have more fun guests like her on. We might have our good friend Al the Toy Man. I used to have Al the Toy Man listed differently in my phone before a more woke culture. You know,
such a racist.
You had a different listing in the phone. My wife had a different listing in the phone. You know, maybe akin to your ethnicity, maybe not. But either way, it would be great if our friend Al the Toyman jumps on for our next sideshow. Biff, on one hand, I'm sad to say we've had two really fun actors that I've enjoyed past this week. On the other hand,
absolutely, yep.
Biff has two new impressions to add to the repertoire.
We both do, actually, so there you go.
Yeah, it was a double whammy. George Segal, who most people know over the last like 10 years is playing Pops on the Goldbergs, and he is just awesome. He is just awesome on that show. I'm a big fan. I don't know if you are.
Yeah, you know, and it's funny. It's both of these people. I really, because I am, you know, a boomer and like I'm not up with the latest stuff. And you know, so I really remember them for their really older 70s and 80s work more than anything else.
So the other artist who passed, Jessica Walters, I know her and I love her for. Do you know the show Archer?
Of course, yeah.
Okay. So there was a precursor. There was a show called Frisky Dingo that was lasted 2 seasons on Adult Swim, and there was about a year hiatus between Frisky Dingo and Archer, and it was all the same actors and similar characters, just in a completely different universe, like kind of a different reimagined thing. But she essentially played the same character, the alcoholic, sex crazed, but super smart running of a spy agency. You know, so you know, I liked her on Arrested Development, but honestly, for me, she will always be Mallory Archer. So it was.
Yeah, and it is weird for me because I really knew her in more, you know, kind of straight, more, you know, like dramatic roles. So for me, the memorable thing that she did was play Misty for me. And I don't know if you've ever seen that movie. It was, she plays, you know, essentially a kind of a, you know, a stalking fan of a radio DJ played by Clint Eastwood, I think. And I mean, she was fantastic in it. It's been a while since I've seen that movie, and then throughout the, you know, 70s and the 80s, she's one of these people who were, you know, real commonly in these like the various TV shows and so on, and generally in dramatic roles. So, you know, it's just you know, just a general surprise, I guess, that to see her. I mean, it's like one of those things. Why wasn't she doing this all along? She is so funny.
So
right?
funny. Well, so the whole Archer thing is, and Frisky Dingo, we're talking about a 10-year window, and then so if you're taking Arrested Development, it's one of those. I think I don't know if we want to credit it to the movie Airplane, but the movie Airplane was the first time that I remember serious 20, 30-year acting, staples, if not legends, acting staples from the dramatic world, took their characters and just 180'd them. And the Leslie Nielsen, and I forget who was the pilot. I see the guy's face, but
I know who. Yeah,
but always the hard ass cop, like the no nonsense cop from the 60s and 70s. And so it's because you look at Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, like these serious things that George Segal did. But then it was like the late 80s, all through the 90s. He was on Just Shoot Me, which was a sitcom that I did. I loved that show. I mean, there's a
he did that. He did that movie, one of the Natalie Wood's last movies. It might have been her last movie, but he did that Last Married Couple in America. Is that what it's called?
I think you're right.
So, yeah. So,
but he was nominated for an Oscar for Virginia Woolf. But it is. It's like she was. I think she hit 80, and you're thinking it's like 80 years old going into a recording booth playing a complete horny. Like 2 or 3 seasons ago, she had a great arc with Burt Reynolds, where the main character Archer kept walking in on them fucking. So here's Burt Reynolds and Jessica Walter in sound booths. Going.
It is one of the great things about how everything has evolved to a point where. Because throughout the, I guess really, it was the 70s when it kind of became a reality that, hey, people who appear on television, actually, have these, sexual, desires as much. And then obviously more recently, right? I mean, it's everybody. Like the Golden Girls kind of, allowed, kind of loosen things up. And, obviously, we're getting better about seeing reality to some degree. I mean, we're still not there, but
I think management pointed out last week that I'm as old. Not B. Arthur. I forget one of the Golden Girls. I'm as old as that actress was when she started on the Golden Girls.
The Golden Girls, yeah. Yeah.
And so, I don't want to say I wanted to punch her in the face, but that's a real kick in the nuts. Anyways, but so we got the passing of a couple, working actors, and our friend Joe likes to say they died with dates on the books. Vibrant acting careers. So when I looked at the rundown, that Biff had, I jumped ahead 1 second. I just wanted to give an update. I made some goals. So by the posting of this, it will be the end of the first quarter for me. I made goals with 5 things: with music, stand-up comedy, writing the script I've been working on, podcasts, the number of podcasts I wanted to do, and working out. 4 of the 5, I'm on pace. For my, I won't mention the one that I'm not on pace for. I'll just say I have the first draft of the script. I have been doing stand-up comedy with 2 different groups of friends once a week. You and I have been consistent doing this. And last weekend was the first time, and I do not know the last time that I actually recorded drums for a new song with Dan and I.
That's cool. Yeah.
So I won't mention which of the 5 things hasn't.
It's the podcast, of course. It's the podcast.
But, Which, by the way, when Joe wanted to stop doing the podcast, not only was I devastated because I've had so much fun, I was honestly George Loman afraid of the new technology. And although I owned a post-production house, although I had a kick-ass editing suite at my apartment in 2001, 2003, and I was cutting commercials and comedy stuff every day, it's been almost 20 years since I've had to learn to edit, and I really didn't want to do it. Just like I was talking, before we start recording, I didn't want to write the script by myself because it's been so long, and I was finding excuses not to do it. So finally, I learned to use this edit system and what I edit the podcast on. And about 3 weeks ago, I called Dan and I'm like, hey, that new song we're working on, can you just send me the guitar and the audio tracks and let me lay drums down to it. And he's like, oh, man, that'd be great. So it's the first time in at least a decade that, usually the way Dan and I work is we get together, we jam. The few times we would see each other, I'm living in Qatar, living in LA, and he would just record it on his phone or something like that. And then he would try to program drums to close to something I did, or he would just put his own drums in there, like his synthesized drums, which is usually pretty good. But he hears songs as like a songwriter and guitarist. He's not like a drummer at heart.
Right. Yep.
He can play drums and he's good, but when he puts down a track, it's usually just a straight track. There's not fills, there's not ebbs and flows. It's here it is, and credit where credit's due. Some of it's just fucking awesome. But this was the first time, because I now know how to use this edit program that we do for the podcast. I'm like, oh, I got mics here. I got this audio system here. I can fucking do this. But anyways, so enough about that. So I look online. Biff had started this week's rundown, and I see Biff has listed LA turning orange, and I'm thinking, okay, I know he's trying to bait me into correcting the color that he put on that. But
I don't know why.
I'm not falling for it.
It could have been a reference on previous president not to be named. I mean, who knows? All right. I mean, you just don't know.
So tell me about my beloved city.
Well, it's just one of those, where they're talking about opening it up a little bit, right? So, and we're currently what we call in the red tier, where there, we have some, openings for a lot of things but with limitations, and then the orange tier basically for a lot of the indoor stuff, all of those capacity limitations are going to go away, and then for the bigger stuff like entertainment, they're going to increase the capacity to about 50%. So what that really means is that April, if they do change the status, is opportunities for sports to get started. I mean, one of the big things is that a lot of the people expecting opening day baseball to have fans. So, if baseball's going to have fans, I'm thinking hockey may have fans, and I'm thinking maybe, it's time that John starts thinking about, where those tickets are going to go. Because, which game am I going to is really the question that I really want to ask as we change to this orange status.
How do you feel about that? Because as we record this, 33 states over the last week have recorded spikes. At this same time last week, like 27 states had spikes, and the week before that was like 21 states were spiking. But as more and more stuff is opening, we're at 33 states.
Yeah, I will say this. So I don't know how to think about essentially the macro aspect of it, but just personally, even though I kind of joke about this, I'm certainly not doing any of that stuff until I am, fully vaccinated, right? So when I'm fully vaccinated, I think I'll be more willing to do a lot of these things. And so I'll go to these games, and if I go to the games, I'm going to be masked. I don't really care if it's required or not or what the deal is. I'm going to stay masked, for the foreseeable future. And then, we'll do, whatever.
It's funny, Biff and I were talking again just before recording. In Massachusetts, the governor about 2 weeks ago abdicated the responsibility of opening schools to the head of the schools here, because honestly, he wants to be able to say, when he runs again, I got the schools open. On the other hand, he doesn't want the blowback. And we talked about this a podcast ago. The long short is they had said our school had sent out a survey and said, would you want to do hybrid? Would you want to go full remote? Would you want to stay full remote, rather? Would you want to do full-time learning? And we're giving parents the choices. And that was on a Wednesday or Thursday and a Friday. 3 days later, the state made the announcement, nope, everybody's back April 5th. We will not support remote learning. If you don't show up, you will be true. It was like a hard line in the sand. And at the same time, the teachers were like, whoa, we're not vaccinated. It's, and so my wife and I, management and I, we talked about it. We're like, fuck it. We're not sending the boys back. Our youngest kid, we love his teacher beyond love. You can't put words into how much we admire how she's taught, and she's older than you and I are, Biff, and she's figured out the Zoom thing, and she gets the most out of the kids. It's wonderful. I don't want her going back unvaccinated. And the teachers unions all said, no, you can't do this, not until we get vaccinated. And then the governor says, well, the teachers are horrible. He said this. He's like, they're horrible people. They're demanding that we take needles out of the arms of the 65-year-old people in assisted living facilities. They're being selfish. It's like, dude, you're asking them to go into classrooms with 32, 34, 36 kids, and in a town like Lowell, where a lot of people have, I want to say it right, generational living in their house, where it's grandma and sometimes great grandma, all the way down to small kids. And you can't. Again, it's not the kids who are going to be at risk for the most part. It's bringing it home.
So like LA right now is what they're calling what they call phase 1B vaccination, and so the group of people who are in that group is 65 and older, plus specific categories of people, including healthcare, and I think including teachers. So that's not how it's working in Massachusetts or in your area regionally? Like, should the teachers be at the same level of essentially need as the 65 and over? I guess
they should be. At the same time. So it's now they've now backed off that quite a bit. And they're realizing, no, you what's going to happen is exactly the news that we got today, is that my son's teacher she sent out a text message to all the parents saying, hey, I'm going to make this announcement today. If you want to kind of sit in on the morning meeting with the kids, I'm not coming back. And we don't blame her. We applaud her decision.
Yep.
But they made the decision, well, we're not going to force kids back. They estimate about 50% of kids will come back. More kids would want to go back, but the town has cut the bus service in half. So, people who are car challenged, who rely on the bus service aren't going to get the bus service. So the same teacher. Anyway, so it's kind of a cluster. I'm not really happy about that. But again, the faster these states open, the more people think, oh, it's open, I can relax my own personal stuff. Like you said, I mean, when they say Dodger Stadium might have fans in it, are we talking 10,000 fans or 60?
I think it's going to be, so what they're talking about in the next tier is 50% capacity. So I guess whatever, 25, 30,000, of the 60,000, I think.
So John,
but that's just there, yeah.
I mean, John's vaccinated, but I don't see him going to King games. I'd be very surprised this year. September, October, maybe.
And that's certainly understandable, and that means that as soon as I'm, vaccinated, that means I'm available to take over his seat. I mean, it's really that simple.
One of my fun, I can't call it a job, I'll call it a responsibility. Basically, this is going back 20 years. There was a series of events, and I'm not going to mention any names, but a friend of ours who has amazing tickets to the Kings a couple times forgot there were games, a couple times gave the wrong tickets to people for games that have already been played, or games that were, here's tickets to tomorrow's game at Friday Night Hockey, and somebody gets down there and they're not for that Saturday, they're for the next Saturday type thing. And so it was decided that at that point, the ticket allocation should be a spread
handled by somebody.
And so basically for the next 10 years, how many times would I call you? It's like,
right.
So John and I would talk almost every game day. He would go to 2 or 3 games a year. He wanted to go to, when the Red Wings came to town, he was going to go to the games. Of course, the playoffs, or if a big name was coming to town, or if he just wanted to. But I mean, we're talking in a 41-game season. There are some times I was making 38 calls, and the deal was, John and I had an unwritten rule: if I can't find somebody to take the tickets, my fat ass better be sitting in those seats because he didn't want them to go to waste.
Right.
And there was a hierarchy of people to call. It was always okay, Paul Ruger, All-Star Tommy, Scotty Black, Biff, Eric, when he was around, you would just go down the list.
Right.
And then there was a second tier. Then there was a third tier where it was like, wow, I know I don't really want to call, and I know John would rather somebody else sit there, but at the same time, it might be this person or an empty seat.
Right.
You know, there was I never did it. I told him I did it a number of times. I threatened to do it a number of times. I never had the audacity. And that's coming from me, so that's saying a lot. I never had the audacity to actually scalp his tickets. Yeah. Although I would tell him all the time, it's like, yeah, I couldn't make the game, but don't worry, I got 25% overfaced for them.
Sure.
But so anyway, so they are going to have people coming back. You know, there were times when I was in Qatar and I would get text messages and him asking for people's phone numbers. Or like, hey, can you reach out to so and so and see if they want? You know, I've told the story on the podcast a number of times. I've told the story in person 1,000 times. It is 2001. I'm working in Santa Monica on the west side, and John has tickets for a game. And it's one of those things where I can't get across town to get him. He goes, I'm going to message him over. You know, don't worry. About an hour later, a courier shows up with the 2 tickets and the parking pass. And I call John, and I'm like, hey, we got a small problem. He's like, oh, fuck. Did I put the wrong tickets in there? I'm like, no. He goes, did I forget the parking? I'm like, no, that's in here. What's the matter? I'm like, well, there's no beer money. You're going to get cheap on me now? And when I say, I would love to know who was out in his hallway, who heard the rants of this drunken sailor conjugating swears in a way that I didn't, to be honest, I didn't think he had the ability to. I did not think he had the ability to swear that much, that consistently, and at that volume. And to this day, I giggle like a little schoolgirl every time I think that. Because dude, he bought it. Like, literally, I mean, there was no worm. It was all hook. I baited it really good.
You know, we should have done that, you know, taking a day off and, you know, watch him in court. We never done that. You know, we should have tried to do that, you know, at some point.
Have you never been put under the spotlight? Haven't you ever had your turn in the barrel? Has he not deposed you on Friday night?
No, I'm just saying, you know, it's kind of, I just want to see him in action as a third-party observer and not be involved. But I think it would have been fun to just see. Hey, let's watch John work because he works in a very public, you know, setting.
Biff, I may, or I may not have been deposed a number of times with let's just say a Friday night lawyer friend as my counsel. When I can tell you firsthand what he's put us through on Friday night, when it's go time, when it's big boy pants, when there's actually a tie and a jacket involved, you haven't seen anything. You haven't seen anything. I may or may not have been deposed once in Santa Monica, and there are 3 or 4 people on the other side of the table. There's the moderator, there's the stenographer, and there's, we won't mention this person's name, a Friday night hockey friend of ours and mine.
Yeah.
It's before we walk in, I was told, don't be yourself, don't be funny, don't be sarcastic. It doesn't translate. If there's a question that you aren't sure how you want to answer, don't forget you have a severe bladder problem, and we can take unlimited bathroom breaks. It's lunchtime, and the attorney on the other side of the table says, you know, okay, so we're going to break for lunch now. Looks at his watch, goes, we're going to break for about 45 minutes. What transpired over the next 15 minutes, Biff, would make your head spin. John challenged, maybe I'll edit the name out. Our lawyer friend from Friday Night Hockey challenged everything you can imagine. I'm not sure where my client and I might be dining. I don't know how far the walk's going to be. It might be to this place. It might be to that place. Okay, well, we're making an hour. I don't know the kind of service we're going to get at the place. I don't know. Dude, he took 15 to 20 minutes just to get them to say, okay, come back when you come back. You know, and
there you go.
And we're at lunch, and I'm like, and we're going back over things, and I'm like, dude, it's like, basically, I'm like, that's just awesome. But why? Like, don't you have better things to do today? He goes, no. He goes, I took the whole day. I calendared the whole day for this. And he goes, left to right, he goes, I know that guy. He's $3.50 an hour. He's $4.50 an hour. The stenographer. And he's like, and basically, I was being used in a pawn. It had nothing kind of to do with me. It was a power play between two companies I used to work with that were both were trying to get me to say bad things about the other place. So that I got pulled into this thing, type thing. And Sean's like, they want to fuck with you? Hey, I got some time. I don't cost you anything. And you, are going to cost them about, I don't know, about $2,000 an hour. So I'd say, I'm good for another 3 or 4 hours. You got anything to go in, dude? And when I say, I got out of there and I'm like, when I say it's not fair to say it was watching varsity play junior varsity. You know how everybody thinks, this 0-16 Cleveland Browns could get beat by Nebraska State, and the score would be 72-0 Cleveland Browns. You know what I mean, dude? It was more lopsided than that. It's like if you could have thrown a white flag out. I suffice to say, they had threatened me for weeks to come and talk to them. They had threatened me for weeks, showed up at the office, would call, like really harassing me. And then finally they're like, I talked to somebody about it Friday Night Hockey, and they're like, just tell them to give me a call. And the next time they called, I said, okay, stop calling me, call this guy. Dude, it was like silence. It's like, oh,
what?
you know him? It's like, yeah, I see him naked once or twice a week. I always tell people that too. It's like, yeah, I see him naked once or twice a week. And then they're like, oh, okay. And I think they thought, and at one point they offered to, well, maybe we can just get to this office and talk about this. And he's like, no, if they're going to put you under the spotlight, we're gonna do it on the official level and stuff like that. Dude, it was the best. It went like, honestly, and it's funny because one of the old companies, there was a guy I work with that I did a series of skits with on my old show in the Crease TV.
Right.
And it was about this guy, and the name of the skit was like Rich the Office Dick. And they kept, only one lawyer could talk to me at a time. And they kept saying, they were whispering in each other's ear. They would pass notes back and forth. It's like, oh, were you a part of a show that had a show that was called Rich is an Asshole? Like, no. Did you? And then they kept trying to remember the name of it, but they couldn't get it. So I wasn't lying under oath. And then as we're going down the elevator, he's like, all right, what was the name of the skit? I'm like, oh, it's Rich the Office Dick. And I sent it to him. I like the next time in hockey, I brought a DVD of it. And I'm like, he goes, oh yeah, I can see why this would piss him off, but it wasn't illegal, it's like, in all honesty, it wasn't defamation of character because that guy was a real dick. Speaking of real dicks, staying in LA, I followed this comedian, Dante, the comedian, on Twitter.
Right.
Really funny comedian.
Yep.
Really funny comedian. But his entire life is dedicated because he can't be out on tour as a comedian right now.
Yeah.
He lives in Hollywood, and he goes and he documents LAPD on a nightly basis. He's like a social justice warrior, but he records
He just
things.
hates the police.
Well, but he does. He'll narrate it, and he's smart. He's super smart.
Yeah.
He knows when he's not stepping over the line. He knows where he can film from and he can't. The number of times LAPD officers have come up and put their hands on him and pushed him for being across the street. It was a few weeks ago. It was like, 5 cop cars, 9 LAPD officers with 1 black homeless guy. And he's like, documenting it. And they come over, they cross the street to come over and block him from, them continuing to harass this guy and stuff like that. But he's been documenting what's been going on. And I guess the last couple nights in Echo Park has kind of gone off the rails, but I'm only following it tangentially from him.
Right. So, so that it's your classic, issue with they've been trying to address the homeless situation there for a while, and so I think there's so many moving parts to it, right? But so there definitely is an LAPD component to it, and So I don't know what Dante has talked about, but there's definitely has been an issue with the way they did the roundup, including the same old thing of where they not only detained people who were I think they basically at some point they declared unlawful assembly, kind of gave them like however many minutes to clear, and whomever did not clear by that time were all arrested, or something along those lines. But then the part of the people who they detained were also members of the media, and so obviously that was its own thing. But so there's a lot going on over there. So there's definitely your typical poor behavior that you've seen from the police in other protests. But yeah, this is it's a mess, and there's a lot.
There was two things that really stood out in the last 3 days that stood out, and you've already said one of them: rounding up the media. Yeah. They put a fence. I think it was last Thursday. They erected a makeshift fence around Echo Park and said, well, not detaining anybody, but anybody inside the perimeter cannot leave and nobody can come in. It's like, but that's detaining people. And then the other thing is, here there are peaceful protesters on this side of the street.
Right.
There's cops on that side of the street. There is no rocks being thrown. There's no Molotov. Right. And all of a sudden, they start shooting beanbags into the crowd. And when there's women there, there's and then you saw one guy. Look, if you're a homeless guy and you got this tent and now they destroy it, it's truly that's everything that guy owns.
Yeah. So, gosh, this is going to, we could talk for 3 hours on this, but I'll try to keep it short. I guess there's a couple things. Number one is that this is the city directing the LAPD. So there is an LAPD issue in terms of how they're managing the frontline aspect of it. But this is the city's, providing the, telling the police, this is what we want to do, right? So in that context, and I should have done the research on this, but I've been surprised at how Garcetti has not been, anywhere near this thing. Like, I haven't heard him talk about any of this. It's this, I can't remember the name of the guy who's been in the front line of this, but there's this other guy, and I know that there's a different person just because they actually have created established protection around his personal residence because the protesters are going there. But there's really one big part of it is that there's really two ways that people look at the homeless situation, right? And the one is that there is a homeless nuisance problem, and then there's the other way of looking at it, which is that this is a humanitarian issue, right? And just too many times, and clearly, right, this is a situation where they're looking at it as a nuisance issue and not something where they're not thinking about the homeless, right? They're thinking about this being whatever, the people who are living around there, or whatever the case may be. That's the focus of the issue. And so it just kind of goes back. We're not dealing with the root problem at all. Like they talk about, we've offered housing to these people, but that's kind of a, to me, somewhat of a misleading statement, because it's not like they offered permanent housing for these people. These people weren't provided with solutions. These people also, I don't know that the housing that was provided to them really allowed for them to essentially move there, because some of them, like, as have pets, right? And some of them, have, whatever the case, situation is, I don't think that they really provided a permanent solution for these people. If the thing is that, listen, you can move your entirety of your life and not be hampered in what you do by moving here, that's one thing. But I don't think that that's what's happening, because I know that I've read a few stories about some of the homeless or some of the the people who are had encampments there that refused the offer for a variety of reasons. Like, there's a curfew to the homeless facility that they were offered. There's a variety of things. So yeah, I just want the direction to change to dealing this as a humanitarian issue, right? And that goes to the the border, what's the so-called border crisis, right? It's not a crisis because there's some kind of a threat. It's really, there are people who are essentially in dire straits, right? It's just a different perspective in how you're looking at a situation.
It's one of those things that we talked about with our friend Dr. Roselowich a few weeks ago with the windmills. One of the big problems is it comes down to NIMBY, not in my backyard. And there are solutions. I almost said simple solutions. There are no simple solutions, but there are solutions to many of these problems. And the mental health aspect. Why are people homeless? What is the percentage of mental illness? What is the percentage of, before the pandemic? I think it was 50% of Americans said if they got an unexpected $400 bill, that would devastate their family. How many of these are families? How many of these are, there's a, and we talked about it with our boys, a number of times. A lot of homeless people have drug and alcohol and substance abuse problems. And again, do they have mental illness because of their substance abuses, or is it substance abuses? But we're not treating, the symptoms. We're treating, all those things. But again, when you see police acting the way they do in a humanitarian crisis with just zero empathy, and it's surprising that Garcetti has buried his head in the hole and let somebody else do it.
I presume that this is because this looks bad for his eventual presidential run is my assumption, but whatever, right?
So let's move on to the next thing that you and I are both dreading talking about. And I don't want this to be a doom and gloom podcast. But domestic terrorists, we didn't get a full week of addressing one mass shooting before we had another one. But I do want to take time, especially because of who my podcast partner is and who my wife is, and address what happened in Georgia. I'm just going to let you talk for a little bit about this and your thoughts.
Yeah. So this is and I guess the thing that is really an issue with the Asian community is that they're so hesitant to, call this a hate crime, that it's racially motivated. There is that whole image of the Asian women that's perpetuated over time as, there's this, this whatever you want to call it, this fantasy or perception that we have these women who will oblige to your whatever needs in general, and just over time, whether it be I think one of the common things that's cited is the Full Metal Jacket me so horny quote, that all that kind of stuff, right? So and when it comes down to it, there was, say what you will, this person expected, because he, targeted 3 Asian-run, massages, and based on what he expected those places to provide services, what I'm presuming, and so to not call this racially motivated is nuts. Now I don't know the legal statute, so that part of it I kind of get, there might be legal reasons why, because of the way the law is written. That's fine. But just, socially speaking, come on. To not call this a racial, crime is ridiculous, right?
I'm going to jump in for a second, but I want you to keep talking specifically about this one. 6 of the 8 people killed were Asian women. One of the women killed was getting a massage. You know what I mean? So she happened to be on the table when he walked in there.
Right.
One of the victims' husband, who happens to be Hispanic, was handcuffed in the back of a police car for 4 hours, not knowing what happened to his wife, who had died. And again, Georgia, and we'll talk about this in a couple minutes in another segment, but Georgia has gone well out of its way to say, okay, I understand Stacey Abrams is a big deal, and she probably was the biggest reason Joe Biden won. I understand we sent a black guy to the Congress for the first time. I understand, or Senate for the first time. I understand we sent a Jewish guy to the Senate for the first time. But we want to make it clear that we're still a bunch of racist fucks. And with the voting thing, that less than a week after this mass shooting they have this horrific voting thing that we're talking about in a minute, and they won't label this as a crime or a hate crime. And you heard, and again, by the time this podcast drops, it will have been 10 days, since it happened. Everybody has saw the footage, but the spokesperson for the police, who was selling COVID made in China T-shirts, says, quote, he was at the end of his rope. It was a really bad day for him. It was a really bad day for him. Now, in Georgia, he bought the gun the day he did this. You cannot register to vote and vote on the same day in Georgia, because a black person voting in Georgia is more lethal than a 21-year-old, racist white fuck with an automatic rifle.
Well, so there's a lot. There's a lot. Let me just start off by saying, I don't want to. It's so easy for the narrative to say, Georgia is this way. I mean, I want to be very specific about the fact that how the police behave is the way that, there's two police forces at play here. I think there's one, which is the Atlanta police, and there's another one that is the county police, where the first shooting happened. And so I think those two are their own stories, and they have their own, obviously, the fact that a victim, right, who happened to be, Hispanic, is detained, not knowing what happened. That's its own thing, and that kind of, that's the kind of speaking back to what we just talked about before this. We know, whether it be LAPD or whatever, there are police forces that, that do these things. That's its own problem, right? And then there is the political aspect, but then there's also, I mean, if you talk about the people of Georgia, it is. This is not necessarily about the people of Georgia in its entirety, right? Because we're talking about a very diverse state, and so this is we were talking about part of it being the political machine, and the part of it being where the the power exists within the state, right? That allows all this to happen. So we do talk about it kind of Georgia as a short speak, but I think there is we're not talking about the entirety of the
and you're right. But the sad thing is, Biff, the state is run by GOP terrorists, and I honestly mean that. You take the two senators who won, and because a black guy got elected as senator and a Jewish guy, in the past, last Thursday, they signed the most absolute racist voting restrictions in the last 75 years, and that's not hyperbole. Simple right. Things like, we saw the lines that were 8-9 hours long for the election runoff in Georgia, and predominantly black communities. Now it's illegal to give somebody water. It's illegal. There was a congresswoman, and I'm sure you saw this footage. If the governor was so proud of this legislature, this bill he was signing, he'd sign it in a public forum. He'd sign it on TV. He'd give away
you're
the
talking
pen.
about, yeah.
And so
the one that was not banging on his door.
She was knocking.
Right.
She wasn't screaming.
Yeah.
She wasn't pounding on the door. She wasn't shaking the door trying to get in. She simply knocked on the door, and this black congresswoman gets arrested on felony charges of obstruction. He's behind the door signing this bill. She wasn't breaking down, beating the cop with an American flag, smearing poop on the wall, obstruction. She was just knocking on the door saying, how can you be doing this? And truly, you go through, it is. Biden said it's right. It's disgusting and it's repulsive. And this is just days after 6 Asian women are shot by a white dude, and then one of their husbands locked up. But so that's awful. But then what was it? 6 days later, 5 days later, in Colorado, right. Another, and it's in a district. Another district where there's a QAnon woman who cannot do an interview without sitting in front of her wall of guns.
Well, and gosh, I don't know what's going on in Colorado, because we're talking about Columbine, right? The theater shooting,
Aurora, yep,
right, Aurora, right? I mean, it's like what is it about? Is there? I don't know if it's one of those coincidences, or if there's something about Colorado or whatever the case may be, but I mean, that's, I guess, Columbine was about 20 years ago. Is that about right now?
I think it's a little longer than 20 years ago.
A little bit, yeah.
I think it was pre 9/11.
Yeah.
It was pre 9/11.
Yeah, it is not. It is in the 90s, right? So
but Aurora was, I want to say it was 2007.
Yeah, and I think it really had to do with the movie, right? Because that whole genre of movies, I don't know. It's just, I think, incites psychosis and
maybe
bad behavior.
But right, we're forgetting there was another one in Colorado. But anyways, we're back to these mass shootings now.
Yeah,
you had on here the filibuster. I'm just going. Why don't you speak to the filibuster for a couple minutes? Love your thoughts.
Well, so there is. So I want to keep it quick because it will get boring and I will not do it justice. But I think it really stemmed from the whole statement that saying that filibuster. I think McConnell basically said that there is no racial history to the filibuster, and so really I really encourage everybody to read and follow Michael Harriot. And he's he had a great Twitter thread in regards to this, and so he talked about historically how the filibuster was used to essentially suppress a lot of these civil rights bills from ever really seeing the go to vote. And I think that if you read his series of tweets, and I think there's also an article on Washington Post in regards to it, but you may have that might be behind a paywall, so Michael Harriot gives you the information for free. But just the idea that a minority group can just by threatening filibuster can keep something from being voted on. If you think about that aspect, this is why there's such ineptitude in Congress, right? I mean, nothing ever hits the floor because even when, and this goes on both sides, you know what, if you have the majority and you can vote on it, that's kind of when you kind of pass things.
So I don't ever want to hear the both sides thing, because yes, there are outlining places, or there are always outliers where both sides have done it. However, Mitch McConnell has been the most powerful person in the United States for the last 20 years collectively. He has. There's not a close second. There aren't. 4 presidents have come and gone. 2 years ago, his aides for Halloween outside of his house built a graveyard of all the bills that he's killed that year.
Yeah.
And so he brags about killing bills. Now, on 2 reasons. One, he pledged to make Obama a one-term president, and he failed. But his second term, he killed everything, including stealing a Supreme Court seat. That's history. But the big point is, he didn't bring bills to the floor because he didn't want his people to have to be on record for voting against gun control. He wouldn't even bring something on the floor. Now, he's trying to do the same thing. Here's what I think is going to happen. I don't know if I think this is going to happen, Biff, or if I hope it's going to happen. I think it's 6 of one, 2 dozen of the other. I believe that this terrorist organization known as the GOP is actively in a game of chicken right now.
I was thinking that you're going to say this terrorist organization known as, knowing you.
Yeah, that's true.
I thought you were going to say NRA.
Oh, dude, yeah,
go ahead.
No, I know you're a sleeper. But seriously, I consider the GOP a terrorist organization. I consider, any group of people that would lobby to take away health insurance during a pandemic is a terrorist organization. Any group of people that lobby to get more guns of war in civilians' hands at a time, that we're in, is a terrorist organization. However, sticking on the filibuster, I believe they're playing a game of chicken. They know that Biden is a creature of protocol, of decorum, of how things should be. And having been a member of Senate for as long as he did, and openly saying he was not for getting rid of the filibuster during his whole campaign, and now he wants there to be stuff from both sides. But at the same time, Biden knows, as vice president for 8 years, he saw, what McConnell did to kill bill after bill after bill. Right now, we know for a fact if they didn't go to that, what is that process called to get this $1.9 trillion, the budget, the reconciliation, They went through reconciliation a couple weeks ago. The last thing that Mitch McConnell wanted to do is this bill to go through because it's 70%. Before the bill was passed, it had 70% approval rating. Now that the bill has passed and people got checks in their bank, instantly, I within a week had my pandemic money in there. Within a week, we went from 1 million a day to 2 million people being vaccinated a day. Money is going to the places that it needs to go to. It's a very popular bill. And they know it. They've been saying since the late 60s, if everybody votes, we will not be able to win a dog catcher election. They are banking that the Democrats won't blow up the filibuster because of there's 2 Democrat senators who say they're not for it. Joe Biden, up until this week, has said it. The fact is they're playing chicken and they're holding up gun legislation. They're holding up immigration. Here's the thing. Joe Biden has to say, fuck it. We're going to get rid of the filibuster. Because if he says, fuck it, let's get rid of the filibuster, Biff, the only thing that matters right now, and I mean this, the number one priority right now, COVID's all set. The money's already out there for the vaccinations. We're vaccinating 1% of the population a day. He went from 1 million in the first 100 days. Now he's doubled it, and he wants to get 2 million, shots in the first 100 days. He's going to do it. Gosh bless him. The only thing that matters right now is the John Lewis Voting Rights Act gets put through. Because, Biff, if the John Lewis Voting Rights Act gets put through, you know what? Yep. We're going to hold on to the Senate. You know what? If the Voting Rights Act gets put through, and if we bust the filibuster, here's the 2 things that you have to do. Make voting safe and secure. Not safe and secure. It is safe and secure. Make it accessible. Make it a national holiday. Keep mail-in voting robust. Get all this shit in Georgia out of there, because if Georgia's rules hold up in the Supreme Court, then Texas is going to do the same thing. But and Texas, we know, can flip as well. But if you get the Voting Rights Act passed, you know what you have to do next? And it scares Mitch McConnell more than anything. If you make D.C. a state, and D.C. statehood has started. So if you blow up the filibuster and you say, fuck you, we're going to make voting secure for everybody. The right to vote is now federally secured. D.C., you're now a state. You're going to hold on to the Senate for the next 30 years. And then you can get your Green New Deal in there. You can get immigration. You can get gun reform. If you don't blow up the filibuster, you won't do anything on the guns. You won't do anything on the environment. You won't do anything on immigration. Period. The end. You will not get those things done unless you control the Senate, and the only way you will control the Senate is to blow up the filibuster. And I'm done talking on that. I'm sorry. Sorry.
Yeah, like I said, I'm just saying. Listen. I mean, people complain about Congress not doing anything. You know what? Let them do their stuff. Throw away this. Or if they're gonna keep the filibuster, they better go back to the old rules where you have to stay in and keep talking. None of this,
Dr.
you can kind of take a yeah. You have to actually literally stay and keep talking.
In Texas a couple years ago, there was a woman. I suck for not remembering her name, but she put in an adult diaper. Yep. She wore comfortable shoes, and she filibustered for like 18, 19 hours straight. Yeah. And she successfully, because the thing is, it was like the last day of the Senate before they went on recess. And if she could filibuster through the whole day, this was going to push whatever bill they were going to have go through to the next session. And public support was going against it. So they knew if they didn't pass it right now, it wasn't going to pass. And so this woman successfully filibustered the old-fashioned way. The next day, the head of the state legislation says, oh, we're going to extend the session one more day. Like, they broke their own rules. So that's the thing. Management said it. In 2004, I was watching the election roll in with a friend of mine, and we were so upset that George W. won again because of all the dirty tricks and cheating. And she's like, taking the high ground doesn't win you the presidency. It's like if John Kerry wasn't willing to fight back the way that, and that's a different story. But that's the whole thing. If you don't blow up the filibuster, you will lose the Senate in 2022. If you blow up the filibuster, this $1.9 trillion package had 70% approval rating before people got checks. It had 7% approval rating before 200 million people got needles in their arms for COVID. If you make voting secure, if you do all these things, look, sensible gun laws pull at 90% approval rating. 90% approval rating don't think people should have weapons of war on the street. So even in a purple state, even Joe Manchin and West Virginia, Joe, you got nothing to lose by voting for this. You'd have nothing. Like, if it's voting at 90%, that's at least polling at 60% with Republicans. If every Democrat's for it, I don't know the numbers. Enough of this. Joe, sorry. Biff, you're not that sexy. Biff, we got a lot of the Land of the Rising Sun stuff to cover this week. A lot.
Strangely enough. Yeah.
Where do you even want to jump in? Can we jump in with Tommy Lee Jones commercial that you sent me?
So yeah, I'm gonna just say, screw it with your learn Japanese. Learn it on your own. Go to YouTube and watch some Japanese videos. And I think the best place to start, go to YouTube and search on the term Tommy Lee Jones Japanese commercials, and there are just some. So he's been doing this for, gosh, I want to say maybe a good 15 years or so. He's been doing a series of these commercials where the premise is that Tommy Lee Jones is Alien Jones, and he's been basically placed on Earth to do some surveillance. So he goes through and fulfills a variety of different roles. So we'll post this on the Twitter once this episode drops.
But he drinks that coffee. It's almost like the Snickers thing. He has a Snickers bar type thing, but he has this coffee, and he settles down.
It's one of those. No, it's kind of inconsequential. It's just like one of those things where, like a lot of the times, they just kind of rolled it in. Like he might be. So this one particular one, the premise of it is that he is a teacher. And then, he struggles with his techniques, but then, his boss kind of says, you know what, you got this, and hands him a kind of a can of coffee, and they drink together. It's kind of like, hey, it's like, kind of like two guys drinking beer kind of a thing, except with coffee. So the coffee appearance varies quite a bit, but yeah, definitely just, and you'll go into other rabbit holes, While you're there, you could also look at, Arnold, Japanese commercials, and there's some quality stuff there too. So, yeah.
Well, it used to be one of those things. Even people, there's a famous director, I don't want to use his name, who in the United States was above doing commercials for a long time. He was too good for commercials. He wasn't going to whore himself out.
Why do you care about suppressing his name? It's up on YouTube.
But Woody Allen would go over to Japan. And
I know that.
But there were so many people who wouldn't do commercials here. But before YouTube, before the internet, they could get away with flying over there and
there were these
these
broadcast things that they said you could not air this, right? You know, in other countries. So there were these, rights things that protected them before. So the Woody Allen thing, that's funny because he did that. He did an ad for a department chain, which is where my mom and dad met. So there you go.
Oh,
that's the company that they work for. So there you go.
Do they sell? So by the time this podcast drops, 3 days from now, it's April Fools, and I don't have anything big planned, to be honest. We've had some great April Fools. A couple years ago, it was on Easter. April Fools was on Easter, and management. And maybe I'll post this on Twitter if she lets me. Management made a sponge cake for my mom's Easter party.
Oh yeah.
And her mom,
I heard about that. That was fantastic.
Her mom was still with us, and her mom fucking lost it. Watching my mom try to cut, and it was a SpongeBob cake, and as my mom's cutting it, and of course it's made of sponges and stuff like that. That was pretty good. One time our podcast dropped on April 1st, and I had my two boys. One of them was Joe, and one of them was me. And they did a 5-minute episode of the show, complete with the awful joke at the beginning and stuff like that. It was fun. Maybe I'll repost that. Is that an American thing, or is that also carried over to Japan?
I think it's a known thing, but I don't remember it being so big there. But it is a known thing in Japan. So
have you either over in Japan as a young lad or currently today, is that a thing around you?
What, the April Fools?
Yeah. Do you ever play them, or do you just have them played on you?
Yeah. You know, I'm not so diligent for things like that to actually have, want to plan to do something actual. I mean, it's great when somebody else does it and, it's executed well, but I just don't care that much, and I don't want to work that hard for that kind of stuff. So,
okay, more Japanese stuff. You sent me a Crime Wave link, but there was nothing on it. Like I saw the guy getting escorted out of the either police station or where he was by a couple cops, but there was no 3D animation. There was no reenactment.
No. This is true. But I mean, once again, this is this was an assault case where this 31-year-old man was arrested for assault at a train station, and apparently this has happened several times. So, I would, just having watched the video, what do you think the nature of the assault might have been?
Oh God! Well, the only video that I saw just saw him walking away in handcuffs.
It's impossible to tell by the thing. So let me tell you.
Please.
So this guy had the audacity to, in a public train station, go up to a woman and cut her hair.
Oh,
I mean, now this is kind of weirdo, Ram. He cut 15 centimeters. So that's like 6 inches of her hair. And so, like, obviously, I'm sure the woman freaks out. They say, "What the, hell? Why are you cutting my hair?" Right? And then the guy was promptly arrested. But apparently, this has happened a few times in that and neighboring stations. So they think it might be connected. Like you think, but.
Like a gang initiation
serious
thing, or
serious
guy?
crimes.
Dude.
Yes.
If somebody honestly, if somebody walked up and cut like one of my boys' hairs or my hair, or gosh forbid my wife, he would not be escorted out in handcuffs. I'd be escorted out in handcuffs, and that fucker be on a stretcher.
Yeah, sure. Right.
No, not even kidding. So another big announcement from the homeland is, I guess we're going ahead with the Olympics, just no tourists.
Yep. That's what they're saying, right? And so they started the the torch relay. Torch relay and stuff like that. So, they're saying that now, but we'll see what happens. I mean, it is an interesting situation there where there is a significant part of the population, based on polling, that seems to oppose having the Olympics this summer, period. They're saying, don't even bother this year either, because we haven't settled down. So, and just to kind of give a perspective, like Tokyo is at around 400 cases a day, which is a bump up from from about a month ago. But 400 cases a day is kind of similar to where LA is right now. So, I don't know,
how's Japan's vaccine rollout going?
It's actually, I think it's relatively slow. For a variety, I think there's a couple of issues. Number one being that all of their vaccines have to be essentially procured, right? It's not like they have. So U.S. has done the contracts for the vaccines were secured, right? So we were essentially getting this ample supply to start with, versus Japan having to essentially negotiate, in competition with all the other countries who don't make their own vaccines. So there's definitely that. So I think they're dealing more of a supply issue, versus here where you're seeing like some vaccination sites saying, hey, if we have leftovers, it's going to be open to everybody because we don't want to let this vaccine go to waste. So yeah. So it is very kind of slower, but yeah.
We in a couple months will have probably a couple sideshows about the Olympics coming up. The Olympics is such a losing proposition for the host countries and the host cities. It's why less and less people are bidding for the World Cup.
I think you have to put a context on that, though, right? I think you have to. I think that it's not this boom thing that people, a lot of these cities expect it to be. I think it's good for places like Tokyo and LA, which already has the infrastructure.
That's the
right?
big. Okay,
Right.
See, so you hit it on the head. But when you look at what happened with Atlanta, when you look at what happened in Brazil, when you look at the only Olympics that was in the black in the past, I don't know, 30 years was actually the one in Colorado. And again, because most of the infrastructure was there.
Colorado or Salt Lake? Salt Lake City.
Salt Lake City. I'm sorry, Salt Lake City,
Salt Lake
Utah.
City.
I apologize. I think Vancouver did okay again because most of the infrastructure was there. But the reason you have the Olympics is to generate tourism, to get people to come to your country, to come to your city, and want to come back. Without having that, and again, it's one of those things. It's getting the influx of dollars into your community, into your city, from outside your city. It's so if Tokyo, what do you call Tokyo? People live in Tokyo. Tokyo. What is the term?
Tokyoites?
I don't know. Like Los, in Boston, it's Bostonians. You know what I mean? But the people in Tokyo, if the money's already in Tokyo and it's going to the Tokyo vendors and it's not going to the hotels and stuff, it's literally a losing proposition that I was hoping that they would push it for a year. If it's a year now, because you and I have talked a number of times, and I'm serious when I say Tokyo is someplace that the boys and management and I very much want to see. And it is probably on the top 3 places.
No, the Mario World's not in Tokyo.
I understand that, but you guys have the super fast train, so we're good. But no, it's something that we always wanted to see. Always go there, maybe coordinate so we can go there with you and your kid. And it would be great, but it'd be great to also squeeze in the Olympics. But it's interesting that they're pushing ahead with it, and I was wondering, because. I don't read the text on the screen, what the people on the street are saying.
Yes, like I said, there is and there's been interestingly a lot of recent scandals with the Olympic Committee. One of the kind of I don't know what his official title is, but like one of the kind of these directors, based on some misogynistic comments, was removed from the post and replaced with a woman who is a past Olympic medalist. And then more recently, one of the entertainment directors got canned for yet another misogynistic statement. Did I mention misogynistic? Kind of a misogynistic country, Japan.
It's not very woke yet. Okay, so we've talked the Olympics, we've talked crime, we've talked April Fools and Tommy Lee Jones. Let's get to the big news in Japan this week.
The big news. The
big news. Saturday, 2 days ago, March 26th. We don't. This news doesn't get to us. This doesn't get to us for 3 more days.
I see.
King Kong vs. Godzilla. It came out on Saturday in Japan. It doesn't come out here until Wednesday. So Wednesday's a big day for me. I might actually go to a theater, Biff. I might actually go see
that'll be cool.
Honestly, I go to an 11 o'clock show on a Wednesday.
Yeah.
It's me and the boys sitting there. It's truly just me and the boys. How many people are going to be, at the movie theater, and we'll go in. If there's anybody within, 20 rows of us, we'll just wear our masks the whole time. I'm really,
but, it's not Japanese. It's even less Japanese than the Mighty Morphin, Power Rangers.
Godzilla will always be Japanese to me.
No.
Kaiju will always be Japanese to me. I am very excited about it.
It's more Japanese than the garbage that was the Matthew Broderick Godzilla, but yeah. No.
That's the one when the eggs got hatched inside Madison Square Garden.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. A little less.
You know what? Yeah. It's you cannot call it a Japanese Godzilla movie unless there's a person in a suit inside a Godzilla suit doing all of the Godzilla acting.
Will the military staff of the Japanese army in this movie be wearing the white gloves? That's the biggest question that I have going into this. That always fascinated me. You know who else wears white gloves? Taxi drivers. I don't know why I mentioned that, but in Japan?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. And maybe the taxi drivers are really part of the military. Maybe it's part of the secret government all along. I think we got a new conspiracy to go. So 2 weeks ago on the podcast, I got to this part of the podcast, and I said we were going to play a self-indulgent theater from our beloved Joe. I prepped like 2 weeks ago. I actually did some planning, and I decided which clip I was going to use beforehand, and I pulled it off the old episode. I decided which song we were going to, go out on, and I had already lined it up to make the editing, easier, the next morning. I was all excited. It's a little bit of a lengthy process to post it to Twitter, because Twitter doesn't post audio files. So I have to go through this third party. The website is called Headliner, and I have to make it an MP3 file. Then I have to upload it onto their website. It converts it into a video file, and then I upload it onto Twitter. And I uploaded it, and I was very proud of myself. And so the podcast drops on Monday. I upload it this Monday afternoon or Tuesday afternoon. I get a call from Wednesday from Joe saying, "Hey, dummy." Hey. I miss when he calls me dummy. Because, "Hey, dummy, yeah, nice job posting it on Twitter. You didn't edit it into the podcast."
It was a test.
So I either Joe passed.
Joe passed. Congratulations, Joe.
Take a skate around.
And you know what your prize is? You have won a future appearance to a Carnival broadcast episode.
Oh, he will be giddy.
True story.
He will be giddy. So with that said, here is Joe as Jimmy Stewart doing the lyrics from Dan Cray's Firing Line.
Oh, that was an awesome one.
So Dan has a song that we're going to do called Firing Line. It's one of my favorite songs. It's a typical Dan Cray love song. And I would like Joe to read the lyrics to Firing Line as read by Jimmy Stewart from It's a Wonderful Life.
There's nothing left to say. We've said it all before. It's everything we've said that's led to this. There's nothing left to do. We've done it all to death. It's time we've closed its eyes and laid our love to rest. It cuts like I'm being carved up from the inside, see? It aches like my hollowed-out gut's been packed with ice, and that's just half of the weight of your sigh. That's why I pray they aim straight and I smile at the firing line. Was it worth the cost? The never-ending fight? Are you any better off, love, now that you've proved you're right? Light my last cigarette. My hands tied. Brush your lips across my cheek. And pull the blindfold tight. Gosh darn it. Ta-da!
It's fantastic. I really liked that song before, and now it might be my favorite.
And you can remix that all you want, Dan.
Okay, Biff, tell me all about the NWHL playoffs on NBC Sports.
Well, so actually I'm missing it right now, but it's just as well because... So, do you have any idea who's playing tonight?
A couple WNHL teams.
So, get this. I mean, so I don't know what the score is now. I probably don't want to know what the score is right now, but the first game tonight is is Boston versus Toronto. Boston Pride versus the Toronto Sixes. Yeah, so I think it was in the second period when I last checked the score, and Toronto was losing 6-1 because, of course they are, because they're playing Boston.
So they didn't have a 3-goal lead going into the third period?
They skipped straight to the eventual,
okay. All right.
Yeah. That's what it seems like. Now, obviously, it's a 60-minute game. Who knows what happens? But yeah, it was 6-1. It's sad.
Where's the game? Are all the games in one location? Or have they all moved the playoffs to one bubble?
So that's what it you know what? I didn't even check on that. I think so the last time they had the games at Lake Placid. So I kind of presumed that they were going to do the same. But you know what? I actually didn't confirm that, and I should know this. But the big thing is though, not just the fact that they're playing this playoffs, and this was planned from before, but they're showing the game on NBC Sports, which means an actual national TV game that is aired in women's professional hockey. So I think it's really exciting. It's obviously a lot of these are going to be baby steps because obviously NBC Sports is what it is, but I think it's just the last year's was all on Twitch, and to go from Twitch to NBC Sports is a huge jump. So in terms of anything that has to do with promoting the women's game, and certainly at the professional level, I am all for. So very excited that this even happened.
Now, do you think Tim Peel will be reffing any NWHL games?
Tim Peel, yeah, Tim Peel, yeah, the guy, So you want to go ahead and set this up for?
Yeah, I see on Twitter the other day. I don't follow a ton of hockey, other than following what Biff has in the Bruins. Did we talk about that? I do follow the Bruins on Twitter. Anyways, there was a hot mic situation where essentially an NFL ref said, NHL. That's what I'm sorry. NHL ref decided. Basically, something we all know, that refs look to give certain teams penalties. They look to give certain player penalties. They look to, I made a bad call on this team in the first period. I'm going to make a bad team on the other call in the second period to even it up, which frustrates you even more. You know what I mean? And we all know that's part of the game. It's always been part of the game. It will always be part of the game.
Yep.
It's another thing to hear a ref actually say it on a hot mic.
Yeah, and and certainly he didn't know that the mic was hot, and it actually happened circumstantially. It was something that shouldn't have happened in terms of that was a point at which there was supposed to be. I think there was some kind of a technical thing, but whatever the reason is, it's really saying the quiet part out loud, right? So yeah, I think the problem is that number one, he said the quiet part out loud. Number two, I mean, really, this was, and obviously you don't follow the other teams, but this was a Nashville-Detroit game, and these two teams are like are absolute car wreck. Nobody gives a crap about who wins these games.
Right.
I mean, he really shouldn't have given a crap about evening it up because nobody cares about the outcome of these games. Detroit fans want the team to lose so they could, try to get another good draft pick. I mean, really.
Hey, how's that worked out for the Oilers? Sorry. Sorry.
You know what? It's worked out great for the Oilers. We'll get, I'll talk to 30 seconds on that a little bit. But anyway, so that's the first part. But one of the things that's been mentioned in several places is that so he was fired. It's not fired. He was actually, he will not be officiating any more games for the rest of the year, which is, and. So is it a big deal? Well, he was going to retire in a month anyway, right? This was going to be his last year. And when I say retire in a month, one of the things that you kind of have to garner from it is that how did he know that he's going to retire in a month when the season is over? Did he know that he's not going to work the playoffs? And the answer probably is, yeah, he probably knew that he wasn't going to work the playoffs because he never works the playoffs because he's not a very good referee. And if you know anything about NHL refereeing, they do get the best referees based on whatever ratings that they have to officiate the playoffs. Like, you have to be the top referees. It's not like they just randomly rotate the referees. For the referees, they get the subset that they consider to be the best, right? And so he doesn't get the important games anyway. So that's, so kind of for a guy who's...
Thus he was doing Nashville and Detroit.
I mean, he's been doing this for 30 years, and he's not going to ref, a playoff game in his final year. I think that tells you something about the quality of his work, right? So that's the first part. What's been interesting, though, is that I was watching TSN intermission, and 3 out of the 4 panelists, and 3 of them being, former hockey guys, all thought that this was the wrong move, that he should have, Peel should have been given a second chance and been able to, ride off into the sunset. I'm thinking it is kind of interesting that I don't know if it's a difference in Canadian culture, or if it's the fact that these are players that actually knew the ref, or what the deal is.
Maybe that's it. Maybe that's it.
Who knows what it is, right? But I do find it interesting that players kind of tend to be more forgiving about the situation than like the so-called observers around them. So see what you will about it, but
I don't have much on a video game review. My 13-year-old is excited for me on my behalf that Resident Evil 8 is coming out in a couple months. I'm not even that excited. I've been working so much that it hasn't really been on my radar. I will say the only news in video game world that affects me is because of the pandemic. I think some children in maybe China or maybe different parts of Asia have gotten very lazy. And I only say that because I went to 2 different GameStops today, and they're still back ordered. They don't have any PS4 controllers. He needs a new PS4 controller, and they've been back ordered for months. And so I don't know where these 6-year-olds are spending their time. Maybe they're just making shoes. But I think because of the pandemic, everything is still back ordered. And that's the only news I have in video game land. So,
are you sure it's not something that's politically motivated because of the way this country has been anti-China, and this is how they're punishing the United States by withholding PS4 controllers?
You know what? Stranger things have happened, Biff. But I will say,
but I also have a video game preview, which is that because you brought up Resident Evil. I bought Resident Evil 2 on PS4. I haven't played it yet, but I bought it.
Resident Evil 2.
Yeah.
Oh my god, dude!
I used to play.
It's
I
so
used to play
fucking good.
So I used to play the original. Like this is whatever 1995. Is that what it was? Around there,
Yep.
1994, whenever that was. I played the original Resident Evil and got totally hooked, and then I played 2, and then I started playing 3 and never finished it. That's kind of when I got real busy because Y2K was hitting. I think is what happened.
Oh,
but
right,
I thought,
right.
you know what? But I was thinking, I should maybe try to play it. So I bought it. I haven't played it yet. I will eventually try to get on it, but I'll let you know. When I actually get on it, that I got on it.
Dude, I'm so now I'm excited for you. I really am. 5 will always be my first love. But 2 was great. 7 was great. 6 was good. 4 was okay. They'll probably redo 4 in a couple of years because it still had. They reissued 4 a couple of years ago, and it still had that tank control sort of thing. Like the guy had to move his whole body to see what was behind him versus fluidity. But 2 is great. 2 is really, really, really great. Oh, I'm excited for you. I truly am. So the biggest thing in the past week for me, the biggest thing for me in the past week, I'll be honest, Zack Snyder's Justice League finally was released after 3 years. Briefly, I will say a couple things.
It lasts 3 years to watch it. That's what I heard.
I might do a sideshow on maybe I'll edit this part out, Biff. We're not sure what's going to happen with recording a sideshow today. I might end up recording a sideshow about Justice League with my friend Sam on it. Long story short, everybody got confused. So for the record, Zack Snyder did not get fired off of Justice League a few years ago. Zack Snyder made a 3-picture deal, as did Ben Affleck, to do Batman vs. Superman, Justice League, and then a 3rd movie. Zack Snyder's production partner, his producer on all his films, is his wife. 75% plus through the shooting of his movie, their only child passes away. Their young daughter passes away.
That's horrible.
So he stepped away from the project. Somehow it spun out of control that he got fired from the job. That was the word.
Hey, did Twitter have anything to do with that?
So they bring in Josh Whedon. So Josh Whedon, over the last year, it turns out, might not be the nicest guy. Might not be the best to the female actresses. I will say that's kind of news. That we're learning about. That said, I've loved his work. I've always loved his work. I love, what he's done great stuff with Marvel, Firefly. You go down his resume, almost everything he's done, I loved. So he came in and he reshot some stuff. He shot some new stuff, and he put out his movie. The movie I like. I really like the Justice League. I know I'm biased. I say that right up front. I know I'm biased. I know it had some flaws, but I liked.
Ben Affleck?
I love him. I think he's great. I think he's great.
Ben Affleck?
I honestly, Bet Fleck.
You know what? I rag on Ben Affleck, but I gotta say he's not as bad as Val Kilmer.
Nobody is. I mean, that when the bar's that low, like honest, you could be in a big budget, Anyways, so I like Ben Affleck, but so
Whoa, I like Ben Affleck in other things. Just not this.
No, I loved him as Batman. I really did. Anyways, so trying to stay focused. So Zack Snyder, for the last 3 years, people were saying we need the Snyder cut. That's 75% of the movie. The pandemic hits. There's the footage there. There's no content. And finally, HBO Max makes a deal with him saying, well, why don't we release your cut? And I listened to a really good interview with him, and he said, post houses are there's no work coming through the doors. Graphic artists are sitting there waiting for stuff to do. We don't want to take advantage, kick people when they're down, but we can get stuff done. What's really funny is he had to do some reshoots, and because of COVID laws, because of lockdowns in LA, he shot part of this big budget movie in his backyard. Like literally in his backyard. And so people have been this is the first time I remember, and maybe you know of a time that I don't, where fans have called for something like this and actually got it. Now, there's been TV shows that got canceled, that people have done writing campaigns and saved shows, but this is the first time I remember that the ground swelling was so big. And the thought was, okay, you might have not liked Josh Whedon's thing. You might like Josh Whedon, but you might not like what he did here. But he came in 75%, he did this, blah, blah, blah. But wait till you see the Zack Snyder. And there was, maybe it's going to be 2 parts. Maybe they're going to do 6 one-hour episodes, because he had enough footage. They were saying he had enough footage to do 6 1 hours. Maybe they're going to do an HBO miniseries like they did with WandaVision and all these other things now. Maybe that's what HBO Max will do. And they ended up saying, no, we got this 4-hour cut of it. He cut it down to 4 hours. I will say very much right here, right now, I really, really loved the movie, is what I want to say. However, it's okay.
I will say that in this context, the fact that it's 4 hours, I think is fine, right? Because 4 hours in a movie theater is pretty brutal, right? But 4 hours watching at home, right? So I think in that sense, I see no issues with that. But I'll be honest with you, I had a real hard time with Batfleck. And I don't know that I could sit through a 4-hour movie of Batfleck, even though this one is probably a little bit easier because of the other characters. But
yeah, I mean, it's almost. So here's a couple quick takeaways. Like I said, I'll probably do a podcast on this.
Yeah.
I'll give you management's takeaways. Zack Snyder likes himself the slow-mos, and at one point she said, "Holy fuck. This would be a 3-hour movie if it wasn't for the goddamn slow-mos." About 4 days ago, and I'll go back through my Twitter timeline and repost it, and I'll CC us on it, or I'll add us, whatever the kids say. Somebody actually did a frame-by-frame count. 7% of the movie is in slow-mo. Dude,
oh my God.
10% of the movie.
Wow.
Like of a 4-hour movie, 10% of it. That's
40 minutes.
That,
4 hours, 24 minutes.
Dude, it's painful. Now, granted, the big bad guy throws a punch and he has these fangs on his fingers or these like claws, and Superman leans back and you almost see him claw his face off. Awesome. Completely. Okay, maybe 2 of the superhero pans where they're all 7 of them are walking up to fight the back. Fine. But every third shot that should have been a 3-second shot was this 14-second, 15-second. And it's like,
so did Zack Snyder grow up watching $6 Million Man or something? I mean, is that what happened?
So I liked it. I will say, 2 of my favorite scenes were Josh Whedon ones, and he didn't use any Josh Whedon film.
Oh,
he didn't use any. And
So that's kind of how you could tell.
Josh Wheaton. What he does great is banter and dialogue and witty dialogue and snappy dialogue and levity. But there's a very famous comic book artist named Art Ross, not the Art Ross that you and I love for the trophy, and Josh Wheaton's version of Justice League, the opening scene with Batman on top of a roof, it is a come to life still of an Art Ross picture. You know what I mean? It's like,
I see. Right,
dude, it's so beautiful. Yeah. It's like and then there's a scene in his where all the superheroes are at the Batcave, and Aquaman starts talking about how he likes being on a team, that he used to say he didn't care if he dies, but he has stuff to live for, and he's young, and he wants to do stuff. And it's like, I like having friends, and gosh, you're beautiful. I mean, you are beautiful. And everybody's trying to make him stop fucking talking because he's sitting on the lasso of truth, and he didn't realize it. And finally, Batman gets his attention, and he really, because he just told like Wonder Woman how beautiful she is and how much he loves being these guys and all this. It was very funny. But that's not in there, so it's less funny, it's longer. I like it. Look, I'm glad that the studio said, let's put it out there. I'm glad that Zack and his wife got to finish this project. I will say, there was 2 or 3 scenes that weren't in there that I loved. There was a couple scenes in there. I don't know if you know who Martian Manhunter is, but they introduce him. He's in a couple scenes. He's supposed to be a big character and the next movie. So I get you're introducing him, but unless you're going to go ahead and make that other movie, it's like, well, here's like 10 minutes of film where I'm going to introduce this guy, and then you're never going to see him. He doesn't have anything to do with this movie, anything to do with the battle. He shows up to say, oh, well, I'm glad you guys got together because what's coming next is going to be even worse. Okay, I got to go. It's like, all right. So maybe, Affleck comes back and he does it. Now, even though there's going to be another Batman movie, you can have 2 Spider-Man out there. You can have 2 Batman. I'm fine with it. I will say that the Flash movie is now getting a lot of people more excited because in this version, Flash is probably the biggest character. He's a big character. He's a lot bigger in this than he is in the other one. So that I also wanted to say I saw Coming to America. It was really good. Are you an Eddie Murphy fan? Are you an old school Eddie Murphy fan?
Oh no, so essentially I think that there is. So I love Eddie Murphy, and I think over the course of his years he's done a lot of great movies. But I think there is that Eddie Murphy that was the edgy Eddie Murphy that I absolutely adore. And then I think he became like try to be every man's Eddie Murphy, at which when he kind of
Nutty Professor.
Right, I think to some degree you could say something similar about Richard Pryor, right? Where he when you want to be the kind of the person who is for everybody, then there is a certain edge that you loved about that person. But I think that certainly Eddie Murphy, I think, is supremely like, even though he was monstrous for that period, I think in retrospect, I think he's somewhat, underrated because I think he is, generally fantastic.
What's interesting is seeing all these interviews over the last 2 months because of Coming to America 2, and seeing how he's looked at by the black acting community and by the black comic community.
Yeah.
It's honestly, when you see somebody like Michael Che on Saturday Night Live do interviews, almost in tears because he can't believe he got to work with Eddie Murphy. And so I just bring it up. So a few weeks ago, management and I watched Coming to America, which I never watched, and it was great. We watched Coming to America, which was great. I want to say I picked it. I loved it. I loved it. There was an outtake as the credits were rolling. And if you didn't see the movie, a young kid had to sneak up on a line and pull whiskers off of him. And then later in the day, he's in the big hall, and Eddie Murphy's standing next to him. And it's not part of the movie, but he's holding up the whiskers, and he starts going, I snuck up on the lion. I got his whiskers. And Eddie Murphy and this is an outtake, and Eddie Murphy is smiling, and then looks at him and goes, "Wait, that's my thing." It was such.
Yeah.
He was
Yeah.
so this 20-year-old black kid
Yeah.
knew he was quoting a routine
Yep.
that came out 20 years before he was born.
Yep.
And it
Yep.
took Eddie Murphy a second to realize he was doing the ice cream thing.
Yep. Ice cream thing. Yep.
And my wife had forgotten that. And
Oh my God.
well, and
Classic.
she thought, she goes, "Oh, I've seen that in another movie," and she remembered where she saw it recently. It was in like Miss Congeniality.
Okay.
Oh, I forget the actress who starred in that, but she's like, "You think I'm pretty, you wanted to," and it was the same cadence. and
Sandra
the same-
Bullock, right?
Thank you.
Yeah.
And so I played the ice cream routine for her, and
Oh,
just
it's outstanding.
the look of Eddie Murphy had of like, damn. Like this kid was 20 years in the making when he was minus 20 when I did that bit, and it took him, like I said, I like the movie, but that 10-second outtake at the end of the movie during the credits just really made me happy. I saw a couple other movies this week that I would. There's a movie on Netflix called I Care a Lot.
Okay.
It's about a woman who works for a company where she preys on the elderly who might not have a lot of family, but she finds an old lady who's maybe 75 years old who lives by herself, and she'll get that woman's doctor to say she has dementia so that she can basically imprison the woman.
Right.
Separate her from her family, so her son or daughter, who comes once a day to take care of mom, all of a sudden shows up one day and mom's gone, and before she knows it, mom's in this assisted living facility and we had to take her house, and it's a big company that she works for. She ends up taking the wrong person's mom, played by Peter Dinklage, and I would really like somebody to point out something that Peter Dinklage has done that he's not fucking awesome in.
He is, he consistently great, right?
And in this, dude, he's fucking scary. Like I'm like I shit my. He's not quite Joe Pesci and
right.
And I'm a clown. I amuse you. But dude, he's up there in this. He's good. The other movie that I saw that management really wanted to watch, and I think it's getting like some Oscar buzz. Fuck. Promising Young Woman.
Okay.
Promising Young Woman. It's about a woman who goes to bars, pretends to be shit-faced, like falling down shit-faced, and gets and lets guys take her home.
Okay.
And then it doesn't go like they hope. Then it doesn't go like they hope. It has a couple harsh moments in it. It has a couple harsh moments in it. I will say, I really loved it. It was really, Promising Young Female, I think it's called. A couple actors in it that you might know. I forget the main guy. He's a comic. Bo something.
That narrows it down.
No, but anyways, it's great. That's either on Netflix or Amazon Prime. I Care a Lot. It's a kind of a tough watch, and at one point, I was mad at management for making me watch it. I was like, I don't like when. I don't want to say why I didn't like it. I'll talk about it in a couple of weeks. But have you watched anything good?
NHL hockey. Come on, it's hockey season. It's like, and I have the NHL package, so I'm
But
just basically watching hockey.
With the NHL package, can you watch King games?
That's the funny thing, right? I get to watch Kings game when it's on NBC Sports Network. Thanks a lot. Is the so there you go.
So, I mean that
sad.
Seriously. And this is not the first time the Ducks or the Kings have had problems being able to broadcast their games locally in the last 20 years.
Yeah, so I don't want to go too much on it, but basically I had a plan, but then during the pandemic, Hulu and Sinclair went into a kind of a standstill in their negotiations. So Fox Sports West Prime Ticket was dropped from Hulu. And so I had cut the cord with the plans of, if I have these things, I'm all set. And suddenly the plan no longer worked. So yeah, thanks for nothing.
It is 2006. I'm living in Marina del Rey, and You remember when I lived right by the pier?
Right.
There was a bar. There was a sports bar directly across from the loft. Like my loft window looked right down. I could see maybe 3 or 4 bars called Hanano's Sports Bar.
Okay.
I went out you would go out my front door, you turn left, one house, two houses down with Johnny Rotten from the Sex Pistols. The next building over was the Whaler, another sports bar. And the Ducks are in the conference finals.
Okay.
Game wasn't on local TV. There was no local coverage. And this is a sports bar that had all the sports packages, but they couldn't get the game. So, like I said, it's not the first time that those two teams have had problems. I just can't imagine in Boston.
Well, yeah, I think back then it was on Versus.
Yeah, right. Thank you. Was it Versus? Oh, yeah, and the funny thing about Versus, stay with me, up until 6 o'clock, it was the Outdoor Living Network.
Well, no, it used to be the Outdoor Life Network.
Life Network.
And then, so when the NHL first got on, it was the Outdoor Life Network. And then about however many months, they thought, well, it's goofy to have the NHL, because that was the biggest thing that they had now, the NHL contract. They turned into the, into Versus. And then eventually got bought out by NBC.
And nobody had Versus. Like those two sports bars. Actually sports bars. Maybe next week when we come back, you'll have a review of the new Anaheim, the Mighty Ducks or show. Oh, you don't have Disney Plus. I will not be reviewing.
We do have Disney Plus.
Okay, good. So you're not Philistines. Now, what is your parenting tip of the week?
I'm not going to watch that garbage.
No, you can't.
Well, so my parenting tip of the week is, as a parent, you kind of raise your child, and then a lot of the times the child ends up liking a lot of the stuff that you like, but eventually accept the fact that they're not going to kind of keep that same love and passion for the stuff that you like. And I'm telling it to you, Jacques, because might come a day where your kids say, "Screw with this costume, I'm going to be a grunge rocker."
I'm good with that. I'm a grunge rocker.
Or what if they went to, I'm going to be whatever. It doesn't matter what it is. I'm just saying, that could happen.
Anything you want to share with the class? Has your youngin' sprung?
Well, it's not so much a disappointment as much as, there was a period where, my son and I would go to these concerts together because we had similar tastes in music. But, where I have not outgrown my 14-year-old self, listening to heavy metal music, my son has outgrown that stuff. So he's beyond, it's kind of past that music now, and he's listening to other stuff. And I'm still listening to heavy metal music. Thank you very much.
Oh, well, that's, that just happened. But yeah, you guys, you've taken him, you've gone to, got on planes and gone to these big metal festivals.
This is true.
So
yeah, there you go.
So my parenting tip of the week is, make sure your kids are careful what they wish for, because they might get it. I was watching a movie with, the oldest kid the other day, called Captain Fantasy. It's an interesting movie. Guy raising his kids truly off the grid, and they're all, I forget if they ever really say, but he can run classes for the 17-year-old son in quantum physics. They all speak like 7 languages. But as a family, they go like rock climbing. They literally live off the grid in the woods, and it's a really good story. It's a really good movie. But our oldest son basically said, he wished, we were more disciplined like that. That when we homeschooled, that we weren't, that zealous with it, and that every day they start with like a 5-mile run up the hill, from dad down to the 7-year-old. And I'm like, you know what, dude? We have slacked off, as I said at the start of the podcast, for the 5 goals that I set out for the year. I'm on pace for meeting. I'm on pace, and I set lofty goals. The workout one, January was a pretty good month, but the last couple months, and again, because I'm doing other things more and working more, but those are excuses. So this week, I moved the drums into the other room and made space and ordered more boxing stuff. So we have a 140-pound heavy bag coming. new gloves, new headgear for him, and it's like, you know what? You are right. We've been saying when it's safe, when everybody's vaccinated, we will go back to jiu-jitsu and go back to boxing. But you know what? Why wait? Just like the dad in the movies, I will be more disciplined. We will do it together. He right now says he's excited for it, but you know, when we record in 2 weeks, I'll have an update to see how it goes. So, parenting advice.
I just feel like this is an excuse for child abuse. That's what I'm thinking.
100%. 100%. No, yeah. I'm saying it right now. I will also say I got a pretty good lawyer on my side. You know? I'm all done. I will end my part of this by saying,
yep.
I did pre-plan this week's song from my brother Zebulon, the John Hunt Roddy Murphy experience. It's a song called Biltendo Sleeves Snyder. We had a roommate, a great kid. He had some people at college in the 6 years we were all there together. There's about a third of the people who know him as Bill Tendo, about a third of people who know him as Sleeves, and about a third of people who know him as Schneider from One Day at a Time.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And there are people who've been in classes with him, who've been on long car trips with him, who don't know his real name. Like he will forevermore be either Snyder, Sleeves, or Bill Tendo. They wrote this amazing song about him. And with that said, I turn it over to you, Biff.
What? Well, you know, I don't know if we put this in the rundown, but you know, don't forget.
I'm not dragging you in that ridiculous banjo halfway across the stage just so you can get a piece of ass, all right? Besides, women don't go for banjos, they go for guitar. Like Van Halen, like old Van Halen, not new Van Halen. You know, like Running with the Devil, or the Cradle, We'll Rock!
My, oh, how Billy's changed. He's grown into a man amongst other things. He gets up in the morning and goes to class. Comes home and studies and busts his ass. Oh, Billy, what makes you different? Is it L. Ron Hubbard or is it your girlfriend, Billy? We miss the old guy. Everybody's wondering why, oh, Billy. Billy's got a new room without Nintendo. He's also got a main squeeze, his girlfriend, oh. He's only got 3 years left in school. He must be buckling down, playing it cool, oh, Billy. What makes you different? Is it L. Ron Hubbard or is it your girlfriend, Billy? We miss the old guy. Everybody's wondering why, oh, Billy. Remember the days when Bill couldn't sleep? He sat on the roof breaking bottles in the street. Now he makes sure he's in bed by 10. At this time last year he was just waking up then. The new Bill is well adjusted, a great dude, but I wonder if he still looks the same in the nude. Maybe Bill will find fortune and fame, but he'll carry around all his old nicknames. Billy, What makes you different? Is it a Ron Hubbard or is it your girlfriend, Billy? We miss the old guy. Everybody's wondering why.